Everglades Challenge 2013. The race started just south of Tampa Bay and goes down the Gulf Coast of Florida all the way to Key Largo. Now I'll zoom in a little bit so we can look at some of the race details. We started from a place called Mullet Key on the north side of the bay. We all left at 7 a.m. There were about 100 boats participating. We all ventured out into the bay, and this was pretty fun because everybody was pretty close together at this point. And it was pretty uneventful going across the bay. The wind wasn't all that bad early in the day, and came on through here. And one of my big memories was somewhere about over here. I was right behind this little island, and there's almost no wind. And I was thinking, it's going to be a long day today if there's no wind like this. But as soon as I rounded the island, the wind really picked up, and it really surprised me. I think it surprised a lot of people. And because it was so shallow, it was very choppy out here, and we all had problems with waves breaking over us and stuff, and we were surfing down waves. And I did not have my cockpit cover on, or my spray skirt on at this point, and I had a lot of water getting in my cockpit, and I was trying to bail it out. And it's a little scary going through here, and I was afraid to take the time to put my spray skirt on because I didn't want to take my feet off the control pedals for the rudder. So I finally made it on through here to a place where I could bail out and get my spray skirt on. But I think one other boat unfortunately did swamp and sink in here, and there's a lot of rescue people trying to make sure they're okay. But anyway, I finally came through here, and I caught up with Rocat, who we're going to stay together, but he actually was ahead of me through the first part of the race. And then I caught up with him here, and I think I beasted here to put my mast down to go under a drawbridge, and he pulled up beside me and was not doing so good. He was cold and wet and getting over the flu, and he was actually thinking about dropping out. And he called his wife, but she motivated him to continue on. But he did take a break here, and I went on, and he stayed behind to kind of recover. So I just stayed on the inside route here just to play it safe. I remember going around Venice was kind of slow going because the canal was very narrow, and of course that blocked the wind. So there's a lot of paddling through here. And then it continued on here, and a lot of good tailwinds through here. We're very fortunate that first day. And the only other event was right before checkpoint 1. I ran aground right over here, and my downhaul line that keeps my rudder pulled down pulled out, and I had to limp into checkpoint 1 without good rudder control. And I spent quite a bit of time jumping in the water with tools, getting that rudder off to fix it right at checkpoint 1. And then I decided to sleep over here that night. And I did fix the rudders. That was good. Didn't have any other problems with it. But I woke up very early the next morning before sunrise and got packed up and left to continue on. And on the way out of checkpoint 1, I noticed a little beach over here somewhere. Can't quite remember where it was, but there are tons of kayakers on here. So there is a little place somewhere over here to camp out if you don't want to stay at checkpoint 1. So anyway, when the color changes here, this is my second day. So the second day was a pretty good distance day for me. We again had good tailwinds, and I was just kind of cruising down here in these large sounds. And I think I beached here to check my almas to make sure they weren't too filled with water. And then continue on, just really making really good time here, just covering a lot of distance in these large sounds here. But one thing I was a little unnerving, I didn't have any plan of where to stay. So I was a little nervous about that. So I pulled up here to this picnic island, but it was still too early in the day to camp out. So I kind of got the plan to go ahead and take the inside route going forward, since I've been in these large sounds for so long. So I went under the bridge and a little bit into the bay here, but then I ducked under back to the inside route behind Fort Myers. So it's starting to get around dusk by now, and I still had no idea where to camp, and there's no place around here to camp. And on the horizon, I saw these two little things I thought might be sails. Wasn't quite sure, but I kind of kept plugging along, and I started to close on them. And finally, I caught up with the sails, and it turned out to be Makatawa and his father, prosaic paddler. And they had a plan where to stay that night. They're going to stay at Wiggins Pass. So I just kind of decided to follow them along on this inside route. So kind of let them go ahead, and I just kind of tagged along behind. And we did a lot of kind of weaving around and going through all these little tight corridors. And finally we ended up at Wiggins Pass. And that was kind of fun. We got there late. It was well after dark. But there are just tons and tons of kayaks here. So this is a real popular place for the sea kayakers and the smaller boats. So much of them left early in the morning, and they all went out here for a small time in the bay, and I followed them out. So the bay was pretty nice. It was a little bit lighter wind than the day before. So it was enough wind to sail, but not so much to make it really scary or dangerous. So we were at times going kind of slow, but other times really going pretty good. So just kind of cruising down the Gulf Coast here. And there are a couple of inlets down here, which I decided to bypass since I was making such good time. I decided just to stay on the outside. Although most of the sea kayakers chose one of these to go back inside earlier. So I just cruising down the coast, and one choice I had was right here whether or not to go around this island or cut through. And I decided to cut through, but in retrospect I would have been quicker to go around it here. But because in cutting through there were some little breakers had to go through, and then the islands kind of blocked the wind here, so it was kind of slow going through here. But anyway, on this stretch though, I ended up with a snuffing problem with my spinnaker. So I beached it here and had to manually kind of retract my spinnaker and put it back in the bag. And then finally I made it over here to Panther Key, where I stayed for that night. And turned out I was initially the only one here, and then met up with Joe Wildlife and Danito. They came up a couple hours after I got there. And so we camped here, and the next morning I had a needle and thread where I could fix my my spinnaker problem. I had to sew something on the sail to make that work. Then the next day it was kind of close hauled here. I had to do a bit of tacking back and forth to kind of work my way over to the entrance to Everglades City and Checkpoint 2. So I finally made it in here. I made some reservations for campgrounds, and then I went over here and checked in and checked my phone messages and did a few things like that. Then leaving Checkpoint 2 was kind of tough because the tide was against us, and also the wind was against us. But finally I made it out here, and by now it was dark. So I was this little stretch here was all sailing at night. The wind was pretty calm. The seas were pretty calm, so I was okay with being out here at night. But I was going to go to Mormon Key, but it was just too far, and it was dark. And I saw Pavilion Key right here, so I decided just to kind of call an audible and camp here. And here I met up with Dancer with Waves. He also camped here. Then the next day, we got up and just had a really good kind of downwind sail all the way down the coast here. We made some really good time. And at one point, I had my spinnaker sheet up, or the spinnaker snuffer, even though the spinnaker wasn't rigged, but it was really slowing me down when I was diving into the waves. So I actually dropped sail and tied a safety line to me and went overboard to get that snuffer off. And I kind of put it in the cockpit. Then I crawled back in, and then I was able to go really good after that. So in somewhere along here, I caught up with and passed Windblown, but we stayed pretty close together after that. And we went all the way down the coast here to what's called Middle Cape. So we covered a lot of distance here. We're actually pretty close here to Flamingo, but it was we were just pretty worn out from this trip here, and even though we probably could have made this, got there before, at least before midnight or so, we're just kind of pooped. So we decided to camp here, and we had reservations to camp here anyway. And Dance with Waves caught up with us about half an hour after we got here too. So all three of us made really good time coming down here. So that night we slept here, really windy, but the next day was a lot calmer. And so we came over here and just went into Flamingo. And we got here midday. We had to make a big decision. Do we just kind of check in and push off and keep going, or do we stay overnight and then leave a full day Friday for the last part? And Windblown finally decided to just go ahead and keep going, and he did that. I think he got in there around 11 or 12 o'clock that night. So he did part of his trip in darkness on it. And Dances with Waves and myself, we decided to go ahead and get a good night's sleep and just leave the next morning. So we did that, although we had kind of mixed emotions about that. But the next morning we pushed off, and we were with Paddle Maker and Savannah Dan. They pushed off about the same time we did. So we kind of followed them up to about maybe about this far or so. And then we kind of parted ways. They took a break, and we decided to keep going. And we took this kind of a little bit southern going route here, where you would come down here, and we made pretty good time here. The wind was such that we could sail it. And all the way down here to a Manatee Pass. And at this point we had to either the wind shifted a little bit, or just I guess this point we're close hauled already, so any other angle just wouldn't work for us. So once we got here, it was we were actually fighting the wind. I guess there was some sea breeze here too entering the factor. We had to this was really tough going. This chart here doesn't really show all the tacking we're doing, but this here shows it. But we did a lot of tacking, and we could see Key Largo, but it just seemed to take forever to get there. But finally we got in. I got in about around dinner time or so on Fridays, 5 o'clock or so, and I think Windblown got in about 45 minutes later. So we finally finished, and that felt really good. So it was a good trip, and I had really good memories, and it was just so much fun.